We had a video call in our hotel room. Behind Hyunju Nuna, who looked very angry, Ellie waved her hand with a bright smile. Even though it was a video call, seeing her face made me happy. You going to support Ronald? Are you out of your mind? Taekyu, feeling flustered, tried to calm down Hyunju Nuna. No, Nuna. Calm down first. Nuna found out about this because we talked about it. No, it was because it was reported in the media. I looked at the New York Times on the table. Ronald Stamper, secret contact with OTK company. Republican presidential candidate Ronald Stamper, after finishing his campaign in LA, was confirmed to have secretly contacted OTK company at his own hotel. He postponed his scheduled events and talked for over an hour. It's reported that talks of millions of dollars in sponsorship were exchanged. OTK company is known as an investment company that doesn't hesitate to invest in venture capital, foreign exchange markets, and derivatives. During the recent Brexit crisis, they made billions by selling pounds, earning the nickname Vulture Fund. Ronald has criticized Wall Street financiers for sponsoring Diane's campaign. However, it was revealed that he received hefty donations from OTK company, leading to public criticism. We never expected meeting Ronald to become such a big issue. Mainstream media mostly favored Diane, reporting in a negative tone as if they had caught onto a weakness. Instead of explaining, Ronald's camp intentionally raised suspicions to use the media's criticism as a dramatic twist. Using the media without spending a penny on advertising. Indeed, quite the businessman, isn't he? Why did you meet Ronald in the first place? Do you even know how the US presidential election is going right now? Hyunju Nuna's words prompted Taekyu to mention Trump confidently. If we were to compare the election to a poker game. Why bring up Trump? Can't you leave that out? Yes. Taekyu responded with a pout. Why are you mad at me? It was Jinho's decision. Indeed, this kid can't do anything against his sister. Hyunju Nuna reached outside the screen and soon put a cigarette in her mouth. Ellie lit it as if she had been waiting. Phew. Hyunju Nuna took a deep breath. The smoke from the cigarette seemed to permeate through the screen to where they were sitting. Why did you suddenly get involved in another country's presidential election after saying you would invest in the auto industry upon meeting Karos? I spoke towards the screen. The US market is that important. If Ronald is elected, car companies with production bases in the US will benefit, while companies producing elsewhere for export will be at a disadvantage. For example, Unsung Motors. Unsung Motors operates a factory in Georgia. But that alone is not enough, so they have 3 factories in Mexico, one of which is currently under construction. If Ronald becomes president, Unsung Motors, which exports a lot to the US, will be hit hard. On the other hand, we could establish ourselves in the US market, benefiting from various incentives and support from the next government. Whether the cars produced there will be marketable is a different issue. Well said, but that's if Ronald becomes president. I said confidently. Ronald will become president. Ellie's eyes widened in surprise. That's unbelievable. When have I said nonsense? Well, that's true, but I was so sure because I had seen the prophecy. If I hadn't seen the prophecy, I wouldn't have even imagined Ronald becoming president. Hyunju Nuna pressed her forehead, seemingly troubled. How is it possible that Ronald becomes president? Even with the current approval ratings. Just because one wins the most votes doesn't mean they become president. The US election we call the presidential election is actually the election of each state's electors, not the president directly. These electors then vote to elect the president of the United States. One interesting point is that the winner takes all of the state's electors regardless of the vote percentage. Therefore, what matters is not the total number of votes but how many electoral votes you secure. Even if the vote count is high, if you lag in electoral votes, you will ultimately lose. In reality, there have been cases in the past where candidates have won elections by securing a majority of electoral votes despite receiving fewer votes. Diane currently has a stable base of 350 electoral votes. There are a total of 538 electoral votes. To become president, a candidate needs to secure at least 270 votes. Why on earth is Ronald trying to take away 80 votes from there? There are regions where the Democratic Party is strong and others where the Republican Party has a stronghold. In those states, the electoral votes are pretty much locked in for each candidate. Whether the difference is just 1% or a whopping 90%, the results remain the same, so it's okay to give up on such places altogether. Instead, efforts are focused on winning even just one more battleground state. The outcome will be determined by how many electoral votes are secured from that region. The Rust Belt will go to Ronald. What? Both Hyunju and Ellie were surprised at the same time. I explained what I talked about with Ronald for an hour. Around the Great Lakes region in the United States lies a vast industrial area known as the Rust Belt. This region, encompassing Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and parts of New York, was once the hub of American manufacturing. Replacing the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, Britain, the U.S. established a mass production system exemplified by Fordism and led the Allied powers to victory in World War II with overwhelming industrial output. However, with the advent of neoliberalism, goods began flooding in from Asia. Japan exported goods, including automobiles and electronics, to the U.S., followed by South Korea and eventually China joining the export race. As trade regulations were successively lifted, American manufacturing began to decline in the late 20th century. The automobile industry was no exception to this trend. During the financial crisis, American car companies went bankrupt one after another. Thanks to bailout funds, they managed to revive, but plant closures and layoffs followed. Kevin Lewis was a laborer working for a subcontractor at a car factory in Detroit. However, the factory he worked at relocated to Mexico last year because labor costs were cheaper there. That day, Kevin and his colleagues at the factory all lost their jobs and ended up relying on government unemployment benefits. His dreams were modest. He wanted to be a great husband and a proud father, even if he couldn't achieve great success. But being laid off even robbed him of such dreams. Those who haven't experienced it will never know the self-doubt that comes from feeling useless for not going to work even on weekdays, just sitting at home. All he could do was watch TV blankly. Sometimes he would meet his laid-off friends at a pub, drink beer, and reminisce about the good old days. Back then, the conveyor belts kept running non-stop, and they worked tirelessly to meet the incoming orders. With the money he earned, he bought a car and a house and got married. Children were born without causing too much trouble, and he worked even harder to take care of his family. But this was the result. Stores closed down, the streets became desolate. Young people left in search of jobs elsewhere, and houses remained unsold. Empty houses with signs that read "for sale" in the front yard. During the 8 years of Democratic rule, nothing improved. Life continued to be difficult after the financial crisis, but the media kept claiming that the economy was recovering. Financial firms on Wall Street partied with money every day, while Silicon Valley struggled to find enough IT talent. So what difference did it make? He became unemployed, the city was dying. Election season came again, and the Democratic candidate, Diane, kept repeating the same old story. But the Republican candidate, Ronald, was different. Unlike other politicians, he spoke bluntly about the reality of America. Detroit, with its substantial working-class population, had long been a stronghold of the Democratic Party. Since becoming an adult, Kevin had never voted for anyone other than a Democratic candidate. Ronald is campaigning in the Rust Belt, shouting that he must revive American manufacturing, but during this time, Diane remained uninvolved. The Democratic Party has no interest in the working class, so why should we vote for them? This city needed a change. That day, Kevin placed a sign with Ronald's name engraved on it in the yard. He also joined the local Republican Party. Kevin convinced his friends to vote for Ronald, but most of them reacted negatively. Ronald is a corrupt businessman indeed. I don't like Diane, but Ronald is the real issue. What difference will it make if Ronald becomes president? Then news arrived that Ronald would campaign in Detroit again. At the campaign venue, a football stadium, not only Republicans but any U.S. citizen with voting rights could attend. People flocked from Detroit, nearby cities, and rural areas like clouds. With over 40,000 seats fully packed, even opposing supporters from the Democratic stronghold were present. Media coverage was intense, with cameras broadcasting the atmosphere live. As excitement rose, Ronald Stamper finally appeared at the stadium. Wow! Cheers and boos erupted simultaneously. Ronald, seeming unaffected by the situation, smiled calmly and waved to his supporters. Standing on the stage in the middle of the stadium, Ronald took the microphone and began his speech. There are many great American citizens here. Wow. And over there I see people sent by Diane. Did she pay you to come here with pickets? Well, the Democratic Party has plenty of campaign funds. Why? Because she's hanging out with corrupt businessmen and financiers. They must be talking about Ronald Stamper from the very beginning, pulling no punches. Oh. Amidst jeers coming from all directions, Ronald didn't pay any attention. In the past, Detroit was the symbol of American manufacturing. It was the mecca of the automobile industry with the dense presence of the factories of the three major U.S. automakers, GM, Ford, and Chrysler. It was once known as Motor City. But where have those companies all gone now? Is it because people are not driving cars anymore? Are they all riding carriages? Or maybe walking on two legs like primitives? Bowing his waist, Ronald swung the microphone like an axe, mimicking a primitive, which elicited laughter from the crowd at his ridiculous gesture. Ronald raised his hand and shouted, "I understand the reason. You all know it too. Our automobile industry has been completely ravaged by South Korea and Japan. Hyundai and Toyota are flooding the U.S. market with millions of cars each year, fattening themselves. They don't buy American cars, so why should we buy their country's cars?" Upon his words, cries of anger erupted among his supporters. "Wow! Ronald! Ronald!" Cabin also shouted Ronald's name hoarsely. In response, opposing supporters shouted, "Diane! Diane! Corrupt elites, get out!" Detroit supports the Democratic Party. Normally, he would have immediately chased them away from his campaign trail, or rather not let them in at all. But today was different. They were extras who would further highlight him. What have the Democrats done in the past 8 years? They've completely ruined America. Yet, Diane chats amicably with Wall Street financiers, talking about America's future. She's a liar. A middle-aged woman holding a picket with Diane's name shouted from the front row. "You played with financiers too." Ronald didn't miss that remark. It could be said that he deliberately provoked her to say those words. "It seems that the woman here has something to say to me. Please give the microphone to her." The staff handed her the microphone and the camera focused on the woman's face. The middle-aged woman spoke sharply to Ronald. "A while ago you met with OTK Company and received tens of millions of dollars. You're a liar. A big liar." Ronald smiled inwardly and confidently replied, "Yes, I did meet with the CEO of OTK Company and asked for help." The reporters were surprised. Ronald had consistently avoided giving straightforward answers to the media's criticism. However, he confessed to this fact on this occasion. Diane's supporters began to jeer. "Boo! Get lost, Ronald." Ronald raised his hands and shrugged, gesturing as if to say, "What can I do about it?" When the jeers subsided a bit, Ronald grabbed the microphone again. "Did I say I was taking campaign funds? The media are all liars. Don't believe what they say. What I received was not campaign funds, just a single promise." It was time to drop the bombshell. Looking around the campaign rally with exaggerated gestures and a louder voice, Ronald shouted, "I have secured a commitment from OTK Company to invest $20 billion in the U.S. automotive industry. We will restart the factories in Detroit. We will hire unemployed citizens, not illegal immigrants. We will reopen closed shops and restaurants and revitalize the city. If the Democrats have let this become a fallen industrial city, I will turn it into a city of light." For a moment, the campaign venue fell silent. Ronald's words were so shocking. Detroit, once a symbol of the glory of the manufacturing industry, has now become an abandoned city. Over 20% of the population has left, and the skyscrapers that cost millions of dollars to build now stand empty and neglected. Street lights were off, roads were crumbling, and even basic services like water and security were hard to come by. The newly elected governor, who had promised to revitalize the struggling city, simply repeated that the state government had no money. But now to invest $2 billion here? At that moment a cry rang out. "Liar!" The voice came from a middle-aged woman supporting Diane. She still held the microphone. "After you're elected you'll change your tune, won't you? How can we believe your words? You received a commitment for investment? Where's the guarantee that promise will be kept?" Expecting a denial, Ronald simply nodded. "You're right. Politicians always make all sorts of promises during elections. But after they're elected they don't keep a single one. I, too, have been taken in countless times by politicians' words. She also speaks lies every time she campaigns. However, I'm different. Whether I become president or not, investments will be carried out as promised." Diane's supporters jeered as if they had been waiting. Boo. Lies. Lies. As the jeers intensified, Ronald inwardly chuckled. You think I'm lying? You can't believe me? Well then, here is someone who will come forward to prove my words. A man stepped onto the stage. The crowd was shocked. His name was Hubel Butler. Not just a gubernatorial candidate in Michigan, which Detroit belongs to, but a member of the Democratic Party helping Diane in her campaign. But why was he appearing at the Republican candidate's rally? He had his reasons. A few days ago, in a private meeting with only the two of them present, Ronald had insulted him. If you won't help yourself, Michigan will negotiate with Wisconsin or Ohio. It wasn't uncommon for Rust Belt states to want to attract investment. If it becomes known that a $2 billion investment proposal was rejected, strong criticism is inevitable. That would be the end of his re-election chances. In hindsight, it wasn't such a bad proposal. If it's revealed that he actively sought to attract investments, his re-election will be fine. Therefore, he willingly attended Ronald's campaign and accepted the mic. Governor Hubel confidently stated as he looked around at the campaign rally, "All of Ronald's words are true. The state government is currently in negotiations with OTK Company, and the investment will be implemented immediately. I will help Ronald revive Detroit. He might face party discipline for this, but it doesn't matter. If problems arise, he can just change parties. What matters is not the Democratic Party but the citizens of Michigan who gathered here, making him governor." Even the opposition's governor stepped up to acknowledge it. No one dared to refute his words anymore. Ronald raised his hands high as if declaring, "From this moment onwards, there is only one principle in America." And slowly and emphatically he said, "America first." What principle could be more important to American workers than this? Kevin Lewis felt his heart swell with pride. The factory gates opened and work resumed. They could pay off debts and take care of their children. From being a useless laid-off worker to becoming a great parent again. Supporting Ronald was indeed the right choice. He looked at his friends, the same friends who just supported Diane moments ago, now joining in the cheers. America first. Wow. The cheers echoed as if the campaign was about to depart. Ronald continued shouting with exaggerated gestures and expressions. Enough is enough with the liar and the nonsense-spewing media. While she is ruining America in the White House and Congress, I have been here changing the reality of America. Now tell me, who is the liar? Who is speaking the truth? Is it her or is it me? Is it CNN or is it me? The answer was clear. Ronald. Ronald. The hands of those who had supported Diane fell down. The pickets and banners symbolizing Diane and the Democratic Party disappeared one by one. Wow. Ronald watched the scene from the center of the stage. His name echoed throughout. Ronald Stamper. Ronald Stamper. Ronald raised his right hand and shouted vigorously, "Make America Great Again." It was his campaign slogan and a pledge to restore the glory of America. Until then, one might have thought it was a lie. However, he showed it to be a reality from this very spot. The voters gathered at the rally shouted with one heart and one voice, "Make America Great Again." The rally was truly a frenzy. It felt like watching a rock star performance. The scene was captured entirely by the cameras and spread worldwide. Republican candidate Ronald convinces OTK Company to invest directly. OTK Company invests $2 billion in the U.S. automobile industry. Ronald's prioritization of America. Ronald Stamper saving the Rust Belt. Ronald's impact. How will Diane respond? The media was flooded with articles. Ronald's Detroit campaign video garnered over 1 million views on YouTube in just one day. Watching the video, Taikyu shook his head. This is no joke. Feels like watching an Idol concert. He didn't become a Republican candidate for nothing. We handed him the cards and Ronald made good use of them. Until recently, people thought Ronald only talked about reviving the manufacturing sector to gain votes. But he not only delivered on that promise before becoming president but even before the elections. While the benefits mainly focused on Michigan, the entire Rust Belt was ecstatic. What was more remarkable was that voters began taking Ronald's words seriously. Thanks to this, the plummeting approval rating suddenly rebounded by 3%. The actual support might be even higher. Although Diane still maintained a 10% lead, the seeds of a comeback were sown. Actually, setting up factories in the U.S. isn't a great choice, Taikyu remarked. Why is that? Labor costs are high and so are corporate taxes. Hence, even American companies had closed their factories in the US and moved them to emerging countries. As a result, industrial areas rapidly deteriorated. Nevertheless, we decided to invest $2 billion, equivalent to a whopping 2 trillion Korean won. Ronald promised tax cuts and various supports. To ensure these promises were kept, he had to become president. Although I had a feeling we were in for a lot of backlash, we had boarded the ship and had to see it through to the end. I wonder how Diane will react, Taekyu asked, placing a hand on my shoulder. She's probably cursing you out by now. An urgent meeting was held at the Democratic Party's election camp. Key election officials, including candidate Diane, gathered in one place. They recalled the name OTK Company in their minds. These bastards. The election was practically over. But suddenly these guys joined hands with Ronald and changed the tide of public opinion. Diane maintained a calm expression. We should have at least verified what cards they were holding. They never imagined a small investment company could become a game changer. They were so confident in their victory that they even refused to meet. Did they go to find Ronald because I didn't meet him? If she had allied with OTK Company, she could have solidified her position by embracing the working class. Regretting now was already too late. Fortunately, the public opinion hadn't completely flipped yet. Even if a few Rust Belt states shifted, it wouldn't severely affect the overall trend. She still had more than 300 electoral votes secured. Just by securing her region well, she could easily become the president. Diane bit her lips slightly. Schedule a campaign in Florida, please. That was her mistake. Even if all schedules were cancelled, she should have immediately run to the Rust Belt. She needed to appease the white working-class voters. Had she done that, even if the Rust Belt was inevitable, she could have embraced other working-class voters in different regions. Instead of relying on uncertain victories, she wanted to appease certain local sentiments. Even strategists, including Joel, agreed with her thoughts. As Diane moved to Florida, Ronald criticized her on social media, saying, "She has completely abandoned the Rust Belt." In the meantime, public opinion was shifting in another direction. Caro's headquarters is located in Silicon Valley. We met with Daryl and the team in the conference room. I addressed them. You must have heard that OTK Company is investing $2 billion in the U.S. automotive industry. We are currently negotiating with the Michigan state government. Negotiations naturally fall under Hyunju's responsibility. She's so busy because of the South Korea branch that she can't even sleep because of us. We plan to leave the research center here and move Caro's headquarters to Detroit. Daryl was taken aback by my words. What does that mean? Caros will become a key player in the automotive industry going forward. It's better to move the headquarters to a place where there are factories. Ryan raised an objection. If there are collaboration issues with the automotive company being acquired by OTK Company. I shook my head. It's not collaboration. There won't be a need for collaboration going forward because Caros will be acquiring the automotive company, not OTK Company. Really? Managing software and hardware companies separately can lead to difficulties in resolving conflicts. So it was decided to keep Caros as the holding company and make the automotive company a subsidiary. I looked at Daryl. Can you do it? His eyes flickered. He must understand the implication of my words. Things go as I just said, he will become the CEO of a company worth more than $2 billion. Of course, we will hold the majority of the shares. It was a decision made after discussions with Taekyu and Hyunju. Daryl has led Caros with a strong passion for creating perfect autonomous driving technology. Even when Caros was acquired by Unsung Motors, he did not succumb to external pressure and stayed true to his path. Surely he will continue to do well in the future. Sergey asked, "Are you in a position to make such an important decision yourself? What does OTK Company think?" My word represents OTK Company's stance. Why? I spoke confidently, no longer hiding. Because I am the CEO of OTK Company. Everyone fell silent. It's natural to be momentarily speechless when surprised. After a moment, Sergey was astounded. That's impossible. I'm sorry for revealing it just now. I didn't intend to deceive anyone. I looked around at Caros's executives and continued. We will continue to support as before but without interference. Create the car you desire. Don't you want to see a Caros-made car driving on the roads? After a moment, Daryl spoke with a stern expression. We will do it. The influence of James played a significant part in my decision. He served as the CEO for decades, enabling Golden Gate to grow into a global investment bank. When you think about it, a leader doesn't necessarily need outstanding talents. Rather, it's more crucial to place exceptional individuals strategically. Despite entering the automotive industry with skepticism towards electric cars, Kairos wouldn't have dared to take the leap without possessing core technologies. Kairos excels in artificial intelligence, autonomous driving, and automotive OS. To stay ahead, Kairos needs to take the lead in the industry beyond outsourcing and collaborations. Moreover, Kairos is a U.S. company and Daryl is an American. It would be more indicative of a U.S. automotive company if Kairos, a U.S. firm, acquires and operates it, rather than directly by investment firm OTK company. After listening to Daryl's response, I spoke as if I had been waiting. I will increase Kairos's capital to $20 billion. When I acquired it, Kairos was barely worth $100 million. Thanks to advancing AI for automotive use, its value is now estimated at over $1 billion. Yet I declared to increase capital by 20 times that amount. Sergey asked in bewilderment, what about the stake ratio? The management holds a 14% stake, with each present here owning a small portion of Kairos. I will guarantee a 4% stake for the management. Despite increasing capital 20-fold, the stake ratio decreases to just under 1/4. This signifies a significant increase in stake value, over 5 times its previous worth. A 4% stake in a $2 billion company is inherently more valuable than a 14% stake in a $100 million company, isn't it? Any objections? No one opposed it. With the company swiftly surpassing $20 billion in value and stake value multiplying, there was no reason to object. I looked around at the executives and said, all of you here will lead the U.S. automotive industry. Please continue to do well as you are doing now. I will also spare no support. And I added one more thing. Oh, please keep my identity as the CEO of OTK company a secret for the time being. After the executives left, only Daryl remained. I didn't expect you to make such a decision. I'm sorry. I should have consulted with you beforehand. I reached out my hand to him and said, I will continue to rely on you in the future. Daryl's eyes sparkled as he said, I will definitely repay your trust. Taekyu spoke in Korean. Isn't this the time when the owner should treat us to something? Oh. It was an unexpectedly good suggestion. What should we treat them to? Pizza for the Americans. I nodded, then asked Daryl, as a gesture of encouragement, I would like to buy pizza for the employees. Is there a good pizza place nearby? Without hesitation, Daryl replied, they say M Pizza is the best in Silicon Valley. Upon hearing this, Taekyu was surprised. That's the company we invested in. Exactly. Starting in Silicon Valley, M Pizza is expanding its branches not only throughout California but also into other states. If we've come this far, might as well try it, right? Daryl immediately gathered the employees through an internal broadcast. They stopped their tasks and assembled in the lobby on the first floor. There, Daryl announced the decisions made in the meeting just before. Under the support of OTK company, Kairos has decided to acquire a car company and produce cars directly. From now on, we will lead the global automotive industry. Wow. His words were met with applause and cheers from the employees. I installed an app on my phone to order M Pizza. Taekyu counted the gathered employees and spoke. I think we need to order about 200 pizzas. Is there a discount for major shareholders by any chance? Negotiations between OTK company and the Michigan state government began in earnest. Naturally, the negotiations were led by Hyunju Nuna. In her role as the branch manager, Nuna conducted negotiations with various matters with the state government officials. Due to the presence of closed factories and ruins scattered throughout the Rust Belt, they had the upper hand in this situation. Before starting the negotiations, Hyunju Nuna made it clear. If the support is inadequate, we will make additional investments in other industrial areas near Lake Ohio, not in Detroit. Taking into account Detroit's symbolism, the headquarters and key production hubs were planned to be located here, but it was acceptable to build other factories in different areas of the Rust Belt. The Michigan state government was desperate to reach an agreement to attract maximum investment. Various support measures such as the free lease of factory sites, infrastructure expansion and tax incentives were proposed. With manufacturing plants, employment would increase, reducing the need for unemployment benefits. If the company makes a profit, corporate taxes can be levied, and income taxes can be collected from workers' wages. This could lead to the revitalization of the local economy, an increase in real estate values, and many other positive spillover effects. While Hyunju Nuna fiercely negotiated with the government, we continued to search for takeover targets. There are many automotive companies and brands available for sale. Among them, the big three in the US are GM, Ford, and Chrysler. GM in particular has deep ties with South Korea. Yet, aren't they struggling to compete with foreign cars in the domestic market? Yes, they are. Rumors even circulated about their withdrawal from Korea. GM denies it for now, but considering their closure of the Holden plant in Australia, it's not an impossible scenario. GM and Ford have approached us expressing their desire to sell poorly performing brands and factories. We first focused on Chrysler. The Chrysler Group went bankrupt during the financial crisis but survived with bailout funds and later merged with Italy's Fiat Group to become FCA, Group Fiat Chrysler Automobiles. At the time of the merger, many expected significant synergies from the merger of the giant automotive groups. However, these expectations were not met. Chrysler was acquired by the Daimler Group, which also owns Mercedes-Benz, at one point and has struggled in the European market alongside Fiat. Would merging troubled companies bring any actual benefits? However, unlike other companies, it's not about cost savings through platform sharing, and the operating profit margin is also on the lower side. The CEO of the FCA Group put the company up for sale, but even after 3 years, they have not been able to find a suitable buyer. In fact, looking at the immediate sales figures, it wasn't that bad. However, struggling with deficits, the focus had to be on increasing sales rather than investing in the future, leading to almost no investment in electric cars and autonomous driving. As a result, GM and Hyundai, who initially showed some interest, completely dropped the idea of acquisition. It was at this point that we stepped forward with our intention to acquire. We first made a move to acquire Chrysler, which is based in the United States. Fortunately, the FCA Group responded positively and asked if they can throw in Maserati as well. Are they selling well these days to be offering it? There are limitations to negotiating only through phone calls and emails. Once the outline was somewhat clear, Hyunju personally flew to the United States. Ellie accompanied her on the business trip. They headed straight to Detroit to meet with the staff. We, who had finished our business in Silicon Valley, also decided to go to Detroit to join them. Can I ask you to book the tickets? I inquired. Henry shook his head. There's no need for that. Why? We've arranged a private jet at a nearby airport. Taekyu was taken aback. Oh, a private jet. I was surprised as well. The US is nearly 100 times larger in area compared to Korea, relying more on airplanes than railway transportation. This is reflected in how most American tycoons own private jets. Ronald is no exception. As a real estate mogul, he traveled across the US in his luxurious private jet, gaining support from laborers rather than just the wealthy, an ironic twist. Regardless, I had no idea that they had prepared a private jet for us. After packing at the hotel, we immediately took a limousine to the airport with Henry accompanying us. Feeling apologetic, I mentioned, we could have gone by ourselves. In response, Henry smiled slyly. No, my grandfather insisted on being there to watch and learn while you're together. Oh. If their goal was only to accompany us, it would have been enough to assign someone else. This was the reason why the grandson of the Golden Gate CEO was overseeing our trip. Taekyu looked at me and said in Korean, "Do we have anything to learn from them?" I nodded. That's the issue. Recently, due to the rising reputation of OTK Company, I've been perceived as a remarkable investor. While I have made some impressive investments based largely on foresight, I'm unsure if there's much to learn for myself. Perhaps it would be better to learn from Hyunju instead. Upon arriving at the airport, a private jet was already waiting with preparations complete, a Gulfstream model. The interior was decorated like a conference room, clearly designed for business purposes from the start. Taekyu looked around in amazement. How much does something like this cost? About 50 billion won. Should we get one too? It doesn't matter, but would we have a use for it? It may be suitable for wide continents like the US, Europe or Australia, but not so much in Korea. It would be convenient for trips to Jeju Island or Southeast Asia, though. We sat facing each other at the table. After the turbulence ceased post-takeoff, Henry unfastened his seatbelt and spoke. Would you like a glass of wine? Don't you have any beer? Henry hesitated at Taekyu's words. I actually prefer beer over wine. We each grabbed a can of beer. I had thought about having a drink with Henry for a while now and it worked out perfectly. Cheers. At Taekyu's exclamation we clinked our cans together. As I sipped my beer I asked Henry, what kind of person is your grandfather? Henry proudly replied, he is a truly remarkable person. Aside from being my grandfather, I personally respect him greatly. I nodded in agreement. Likewise. It's no exaggeration to say that his role has been significant in the growth of Golden Gate. Henry seemed eager to converse with us, sharing various stories. Henry had naturally developed an interest in investment from observing his grandfather since childhood. Consequently, he graduated from Harvard with a degree in philosophy and completed an MBA to pursue a path in investment. Taekyu posed a question. I was interested in investing. Why did you major in philosophy? My grandfather said that investment should start with understanding people. In order to do that, philosophy should be the foundation. The biggest reason good policies fail is because they fail to resonate with people. The same goes for why good investments fail. The market doesn't move based on cold logic and judgment, but rather a mix of people's fears and irrationality. Seeing the truth amidst all that is not an easy task. You need to have both cold logic and animal instincts, sometimes relying on logic and sometimes on instincts to adapt to market changes. However, in situations involving money, neither reason nor emotion works properly. Why would a perfectly sane person lose their mind and bet in a casino? Does your father work at Golden Gate too? Henry shook his head in response to my question. No, my grandfather said my father lacks talent in investing. He also wasn't really interested. He's currently working as a professor at a university. What about you then? Henry smiled again. Fortunately, I was told I have the qualities to be an investor. So, are they grooming you to take over? Perhaps Henry could become the CEO of Golden Gate in the future. I have one question. What is it? Do you really think Ronald will become the president? You ask this because you still believe Diane has the upper hand, right? Despite the comeback in Detroit, it's a fact that Diane still has higher support. I laughed. No matter what happens this year, it won't be surprising. Before we knew it, empty beer cans had started to pile up in front of us. As we exchanged various conversations, the view of Detroit outside the window came into sight. Hyunju and Ellie were staying at a hotel near Detroit City Hall. As soon as our private plane landed, a limousine was ready at the airport, and we headed straight to the hotel. We could meet the two of them in the hotel lobby. Ellie greeted us with open arms. It's been a while for both of you. It felt like it had been a really long time since I last saw them. Thinking about it, it has been quite a while. I greeted them happily, asking, how have you both been? Ellie frowned and said, I haven't been doing well because Jessica kept giving me work to do. I thought I could rest a bit coming to these. Hyunju seemed exhausted. Although she always appeared that way, today it seemed particularly severe. You look tired, are you okay? I asked. Hyunju let out a sigh and said, I would have been fine if you two hadn't been so busy. Due to the chaotic situation with the Korean branch, she had to fly to the US for investment and negotiation issues. It seems like she hardly had time to rest or do anything else. Scratching my head, I apologized. I'm sorry. I didn't expect things to escalate like this. I had planned for a gradual progression, but somehow things had turned out differently. Ellie asked, who is this gentleman? Standing behind us was Henry, blushing for some reason and remaining silent. Had the beer he drank on the plane not worn off yet? I introduced him instead. This is Henry Goldman, the grandson of James C. Goldman, CEO of Golden Gate. Upon hearing my words, Ellie was surprised, and Hyunju also had a slightly astonished expression. Nice to meet you for the first time. I'm Ellie Kim, working at the Korea branch. This is Jessica Oh, the manager of the Korea branch. Henry lowered his head in surprise. Oh yes. Nice to meet you. I'm Henry. Without even meeting Ellie's gaze, Henry blushed suspiciously. Could it be possible? Taekyu whispered to me in a low voice, Looks like he has a crush on Ellie. Could see it too. Taekyu nudged my side with his elbow. You need to relax a bit. Why me? Hyunju Nuna said, since the greetings seemed to be over quickly, both of you follow me to the room. We entered the hotel room. Until a moment ago the room was filled with cigarette smoke as if someone had been smoking. I said to Ellie, you're not sharing the same room, right? Secondhand smoke isn't good for health. I do have a separate room, but besides sleeping hours, we're together all the time anyway. What if my skin gets affected? Taekyu said, as someone who has suffered from secondhand smoke since middle school, I realize there's only one way to prevent it. What is it? Smoking together. If you smoke directly you can avoid secondhand smoke. This is nonsense. Hyunju took a drag of her cigarette and we immediately began the meeting. How did the negotiations go? The negotiations with the Michigan state government are almost finalized. We secured the main office and factory site, and the infrastructure will be managed by the state. We have also agreed to receive tax benefits and various forms of support. What about FCA? Their representatives are expected to come over tomorrow. It seems they want to streamline and profitable brands and factories during this opportunity. They probably wouldn't want to let go of successful brands. Anyway, acquiring Chrysler will help us fall in line. If we also acquire an electric car company, it would be a perfect match. Any suitable companies in mind? The bigger issue is the US presidential election. Everyone's attention is focused on that globally, right? The US accounts for about 20% of the global GDP, but its influence is several times more. With its overwhelming military power and the dollar as the reserve currency, many countries are influenced by US policies and interest rates. That's why all countries have to keep an eye on the US election. What's the sentiment in Korea? Absolutely against Ronald. Does that mean it's absolutely impossible, or do they absolutely hope it doesn't happen? Both. Seems he is quite unpopular. Well, he did make quite a few controversial remarks about Korea too. Other countries are in a similar situation. There are hardly any countries hoping for Ronald except maybe Israel because of his anti-Muslim stance. If everyone else supports Diane and we stand by Ronald, it might cause more trouble if he actually becomes president, even more than during Brexit. Hyunja's expression showed clear distress. Why support Ronald of all people? It's better to support Diane. That's what I wanted to do, but they weren't receptive over there. If Diane had become the candidate, would the situation have improved from now? Due to Ronald's enthusiastic promotion, OTK Company is also receiving attention. Ronald constantly shared his achievements on social media regarding the progress of investments. Thanks to this, it became known worldwide that OTK Company owns Keros and is investing in the automotive industry. Should I be thankful for the publicity provided? Let's think positively. If things go well, you could carry the President of the United States on your back, right? In Korea, the business sector and the political sector are almost one and the same. Therefore, if I have decided to fight against Unsung Corporation, joining hands with the political sector seems inevitable if I want to avoid being left behind. Having someone on my side is necessary. If that someone is the US president, it would be more than ideal. That's talking about when things go well. It will go well. Trust me, Jin-Hoo reassured. Hyunju nodded. I know. There must be a good reason for what you are doing, Jin-Hoo. After Brexit there is a sense of increased trust. Ellie also chimed in. I believe in Jin-Hoo too. Thank you, Jin-Hoo replied. Hyunju extinguished her cigarette and clapped her hands. Let's start working now. Negotiations with the government for support, acquisition talks with the FCA group, relocating Keros headquarters and more work was indeed piling up. In this chaotic situation, an unexpected person came looking for me. I headed to the hotel meeting room with Ellie. There, a bald man in a suit and glasses was already there. He seemed a bit nervous, perhaps due to his pale skin and prominent forehead. Nice to meet you. I am the CEO of OTK Company. This is Ellie, our lawyer. Nice to meet you. A brief look of surprise flickered across his face. It must be fascinating to hear that a young Asian man in his 20s is the CEO of a mysterious investment company like OTK Company. Since he didn't ask if it was true, it seemed like he already had some information about me. I'm Joel. He is the chief strategist of Diane's election campaign, responsible for everything from campaign slogans to TV ads and rally schedules. Despite being busy, he came to see me. Or is it because he's so busy that he came to see me? After exchanging greetings, we sat down. I requested a meeting with you before, and now we finally meet. Joel smiled wryly at my words. I also regret that. It would have been better if we had met earlier. What can I do for you? He answered my question directly. We would like your help. I somewhat expected this request when he asked to meet. What does that mean? Your candidate also views OTK Company's investment positively. However, they have expressed concerns about the rush. They are aware that the agreement with the current government has not been signed yet. What do you think about delaying the signing? Are you asking me to break a promise? Joel shook his head in response. Just a temporary delay. Ronald is actively promoting OTK Company's investment as his achievement. If we show disinterest or intend to withdraw our investment in such a situation, it would greatly impact him. Regardless of which side you stand on, investing in the American auto industry is certainly helpful. Yet you make such a request. Is this what they call politics? What will I gain by doing this? As you know, most governors in the Rust Belt are Democrats. Candidate Diane plans to loosen regulations on autonomous driving, legalize driverless vehicles, and provide subsidies for autonomous cars to advance the American auto industry. Are you planning to amend the law in favor of Karos? I tapped the table with my finger. Seeing me ponder, Joel spoke softly. You must understand that losing a few states in the Rust Belt won't harm the overall trend. I believe you will make the right choice. The election is fast approaching. While Ronald is gaining ground for a turnaround, the advantage is still with Diane. According to polls, she leads not only in popularity but also in electoral votes. Experts predict that Diane will easily secure between 310 and 340 electoral votes and win the presidency. Joel looked confident. Is he so sure that his proposal will be accepted? Even if I continue to support her, there is no guarantee that Ronald will win. However, if I withdraw my support, Diane's victory is certain. I have one question. What is it? Was it really necessary for you to come to me? For a complete victory? Are you not willing to allow any variables? The thought that my choices could change the President of the United States feels strange. Nevertheless, the answer has already been decided. I will decline. Unexpectedly, Joel's expression froze stiff at the unexpected answer. You will regret this. Playing hardball? I chuckled softly. Trust is the lifeblood of business. You can lose money and earn it back, but once you lose trust, it's over. I believe candidate Diane will understand. If she doesn't, there's not much we can do. Joel rose from his seat without saying another word. Are things now completely severed with Diane's camp? It leaves a bitter taste. I didn't intend to make enemies. Ellie asked me, why did you refuse? I replied as if it were obvious. You can't believe politicians' words. Will Diane's statements about becoming president actually come to fruition? Major car companies like GM and Ford, along with top IT firms, are backing Diane's election campaign. Even if they oppose, could they still push through legislation beneficial for us? Above all, since Diane didn't promise this directly and it's not written in any document, there's no way to hold her accountable later. What about Ronald? It's another question whether he's not a politician. Ronald has spearheaded investments in the automotive industry and publicly pledged to support it to the fullest if he becomes president. From the outset of revitalizing U.S. manufacturing, there's no reason for him to mistreat us. And being a businessman himself, he'd likely strive to keep his promises whenever possible. At least more trustworthy than a politician. That's all talking about when Ronald becomes president. If Diane becomes president, it might be challenging to continue doing business in the U.S. Ronald will be elected. Ellie looked puzzled. She must be wondering why I'm so confident. Rather than that, I should give Ronald a call and express my concerns. Of course, it is likely that the fact that I contacted a key figure in Diane's election campaign would have also reached Ronald's side. I should reassure him so that unnecessary doubts do not arise. Let's sign the agreement with the government right away. What if Ronald becomes president but fails to get re-elected? I chuckled and said, there's nothing to worry about. 4 years later, OTK Company will have grown enough that we won't have to worry about the political climate in the United States. /N How does any company influence the US political system? Disney has been very active in influencing US copyright laws to protect its characters, including Mickey Mouse. Here's a simplified explanation. Lobbying efforts. Disney has spent millions of dollars on lobbying to extend copyright terms. They've worked to convince lawmakers that longer copyright protections are necessary to protect creative works and ensure continued revenue for creators. Copyright extensions. Over the years, Disney has successfully lobbied for extensions to copyright terms. The most notable extension was the Copyright Term Extension Act of 1998, also known as the Mickey Mouse Protection Act, which extended copyright terms by 20 years. Public domain concerns. Without these extensions, Mickey Mouse would have entered the public domain in 2003, allowing anyone to use the character without permission. By extending the copyright, Disney has maintained exclusive control over Mickey Mouse and other characters. Economic impact. Disney argues that longer copyright terms help protect jobs and revenue in the creative industries. They claim that without these protections, the economic impact on creators and businesses would be significant. Ongoing influence. Disney continues to lobby for further protections and extensions, ensuring that its iconic characters remain under its control for as long as possible. Disney's efforts have been controversial, with critics arguing that excessively long copyright terms stifle creativity and limit public access to cultural works. However, Disney maintains that these measures are necessary to protect its intellectual property and support the creative economy. In the hotel room, there was a fax machine, computer, and printer installed. We all gathered around and processed the incoming documents. Hyunju, who led the negotiations, carefully reviewed all the documents, while Ellie checked for any legal issues one by one. As the final decision-maker, I reviewed the documents that were placed in front of me and approved them. However, it doesn't mean that we handle everything ourselves. We decided to consult Golden Gate headquarters regarding the Kairos relocation, and Golden Gate's M&A experts flew to Italy to negotiate with the FCA group. For smaller tasks that could be delegated, K Company was mobilized. I had a conversation with Senior Sanjiop after a long time. Senior Sanjiop greeted me warmly, saying, "I hear about the news through Ronald's SS." Unlike Diane, Ronald actively used SNS for his election campaign. If you searched Ronald's name, OTK Company would automatically come up as a related search term. Sell us a bit less. Well, we would welcome that, even if it means achieving victory that way. How are things on your end? I finished moving recently. When will you come back to Korea? As soon as things wrap up, we'll all go in together. Come back quickly. It's boring here without you in Korea. Got it. We'll talk more in person. While we had some flexibility, Hyunju was stretched to the limit even if she had two bodies. She didn't even have time to sleep, taking power naps every 15 minutes and throwing herself into work. Taekyu, who was less particular, said, "It's not like we're at the office, at least dress comfortably." Unlike us, who wore training clothes or jeans, Hyunju was in her usual high-waisted skirt and white blouse, with her hair neatly tied back and fixed with a pin, working diligently with a straight back and poised posture. Don't let your guard down. Honestly, she is very diligent in self-management. Even though she knows she should learn from others, she doesn't think she can do it when it comes down to actually doing it. Double-check one last time. Yes. Hyunju carefully checked each clause of the agreement handed to her, Ellie, when suddenly my phone vibrated on the table. Zing. An unknown number is displayed on the screen. Could it be from the Diane camp? As I hesitated to answer, Ellie asked, "Why aren't you picking up?" Ellie looked at me with a suspicious gaze. Could it be that glass girl or something? That's impossible. What on earth is a glass girl or something like that? The number seemed to be from the United States. I decided to answer the call. "Hello. Long time no see, Mr. Kong. It's James." The caller was none other than James C. Goldman, the CEO of Golden Gate. What could he want from me? Yes, hello. The U.S. political scene is in an uproar because of OTK Company. I heard you rejected Diane's proposal. Rumors spread quickly indeed. I asked him, "Who do you think will become the president?" Rationally, it would be Diane, but people don't always act rationally, do they? Diane is rational and calm. She explains her policies based on clear evidence and persuades others. On the other hand, Ronald is emotional and impulsive. Rather than providing solid evidence, he simply raises his voice to assert his beliefs. Will there be articles pointing out errors in his speech right after he speaks? However, emotional outbursts often resonate better with those who feel they are being harmed, rather than logical persuasion. Even if there are some minor errors, would that really be a big deal? If OTK Company had not sided with Ronald's camp, I would have been confident that Diane would win. But now, I'm not sure how it will turn out. I received a lot of help this time. If it weren't for James, it would have been difficult to get in touch with Ronald. I have one request to make. What's the request? I would like Mr. Kong to take care of Henry. I hope OTK Company will accept. Excuse me. I was taken aback by the unexpected job offer. There's nothing for me to learn from you. Unlike professions like lawyers or doctors, investors don't require certifications. Anyone with money can enter the financial market. While there are elites who have received systematic financial investment education for a long time, there are also those who stumble into investing. I'm surely the latter. If there were shortcuts and saints in investing, I would definitely be classified as a saint. I haven't even graduated from school, let alone an MBA. James chuckled upon hearing my story. It's not about being smart just because you've learned a lot. Life, like investments, doesn't always go by the textbooks. Just like seeing Hyunju, you can tell that Golden Gate is brimming with top talents from around the world. Despite that, if they ask someone like me instead of Golden Gate, there must be a good reason, right? Does Henry know about this? I also want this opportunity. It's rare to have a chance to work with a legendary investor. Saying this much, it seemed inappropriate to refuse. I nodded my head. Understood. Henry is older than me and his financial knowledge surpasses mine by far. I hope I won't be blamed later for ruining his grandson, right? Too much has been revealed about Mr. Kong. It's better to start preparing slowly. Since coming to the United States, I have been disclosing and moving around, revealing my identity in various places. I don't know from which side the information leaked, but the media revealed that the CEO of OTK Company is a young Asian man in his 20s. Generally, the atmosphere was dubbed as Catara communication. This is because it's hard to believe that a young man in his 20s could have caused such a big deal. Anyway, it's only a matter of time before my identity is revealed. After ending the call and putting down the phone, Taekyu asked me, "Who was it?" I talked about the phone call just now and asked Hyunju for her opinion. Would it be okay to accept Henry? After a moment of thought, Hyunju said, "It's not a bad offer. If James C. Goldman marked him as a successor, then he should be able to handle his share well." Taekyu nodded. Right. We need some employees too. Is it reasonable for a company with over 50 trillion in assets to be run by just the 3 major shareholders? That's a valid point. If Henry joins, will we finally have our first employee? Hyunju, looking tired, took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes, saying, "For now, bring him in." Yes. Henry was staying in the next room with the security guards. I went there and said, "I just heard the news." Henry smiled and said, "It's an honor to work together." We moved together. As Henry entered, Hyunju stood up and reached out her hand. "Welcome to OTK Company," she said. Blushing, Henry shook her hand and replied, "Thank you. I look forward to working with you." Before the greetings were even finished, Hyunju placed a stack of documents in his arms. "Let's start working right away," she said. "Ah, I understand," Henry replied, hurriedly taking off his coat and sitting down. His upper body looked sturdy, likely from regular exercise. Taekyu whispered to me, "We're lucky not to be under her." I nodded in agreement. Indeed. *****. In the aftermath of Brexit, K Company became the most famous financial company in Korea. Until now, the Korean financial market has been nothing but a playground for foreigners. While foreign IBs and PFEs made astronomical amounts of money in real estate, stocks, bonds, and derivatives, Korean financial companies did not reap significant profits from abroad. However, within just 2 years of its establishment, the company swept through the global derivatives market and amassed nearly 5 trillion won. The media extensively covered this fact, making CEO Park Sang-yeop a celebrity. He was even hailed as the Warren Buffett of Korea. K Company, which was once just a small venture capital firm, had grown to compete on par with major IBs. It was rare for a company apart from the top 5 conglomerates to have such significant cash reserves. How this money would be used became a matter of great interest. Would they continue venture capital or acquisitions, or would they reinvest in the financial market? Actually, there were many doubts about the true identity of K Company. There is no doubt about Park Sang-yeep's investment prowess. However, the source of the initial investment capital was unclear. With 98% of the corporation being owned by a foreign company, the identity of this company remains unknown. Who could have provided the funding? Not only the media but also business circles and political circles showed interest in K Company. The financial industry was especially nervous about the emergence of a new financial conglomerate. Are they foes or allies? Are they competitors or business partners? Even the conglomerates showed vigilance. Above all, the startups owned by K Company were the main concern. The startups entering the new industries thrived daily with the support of K Company. While it wasn't clear immediately, it was certain that these startups, in which K Company holds shares, would disrupt the domestic industries monopolized by conglomerates in the future. No one wanted a new competitor to emerge. They had to either crush them before they grew too big or acquire them. However, with K Company's financial power backing them, it wasn't easy. The conglomerates collectively pressured the government to investigate and regulate K Company. Soon enough, the Blue House took action. The current president, Park Si-hyung, received strong support from the business sector during his election and continues to do so while in power. Therefore, he readily granted their wishes. The president instructed the head of the National Intelligence Service, Yoon Se-won, investigate the company called K Company. The National Intelligence Service is originally an agency that collects information for national security. Given the nature of the armistice country with North and South Korea in confrontation, its importance cannot be overstated. However, the reality was a bit different. Since the previous government, the president's close aides had been appointed as heads of the National Intelligence Service, taking on the role of the regime's watchdog. The National Intelligence Service secretly began its investigation into K Company. Not only the CEO Park Sang-yeep, but all employees were placed under surveillance. It was more of a legal surveillance than an investigation, yet no one found it suspicious. Although several instances of illegal surveillance had been brought up before, all had been swept under the rug or not even prosecuted by the prosecution. Everything is for the country, so where could there be illegality? Simply because the source of funds seems to be related to North Korea, everything was tolerated. Not long after the investigation began, it was possible to uncover several facts that had not been revealed before. Since its establishment, K Company has had a deep connection with the American IB Golden Gate, conducting all financial transactions through Golden Gate. In addition to investing on its own, K Company also handled business entrusted by OTK Company separately. This meant that K Company had a close relationship with OTK Company. Could it be that OTK Company is supporting K Company financially? The list of employees included the names Oh Taek-gyu and Kang Jin-hoo. However, these two received huge salaries but did not even show up at the company. And Oh Taek-gyu's Nuna is none other than Oh Hyun-ju, the head of Golden Gate's Korean branch. Things seem to be unraveling. Who are these people exactly? At that point, it was revealed that OTK Company, in collaboration with Republican candidate Ronald, would invest $2 billion in the American automotive industry. All this happened after Oh Taek-gyu and Kang Jin-hoo left for the U.S. The following article was even more shocking. The CEO of OTK Company is in his 20s and of Asian descent. The National Intelligence Service retrieved Park Sang-yeep's call records. He changed numbers several times and frequently communicated with Kang Jin-hoo and Oh Hyun-ju. Calls were confirmed before and after Brexit and even recently. Keep digging into Oh Taek-gyu and Kang Jin-hoo. In addition to call records, financial transactions were also investigated, revealing crucial evidence. Records of funds transferred domestically by OTK Company were found from 2 years ago. They sent 1.3 billion won to Kang Jin-hoo twice and a whopping 13 billion won to Oh Taek-gyu. Buoyed by all the illegally gathered information, Yoon Se-won could draw a conclusion. OTK Company was actually Oh Taek-gyu Company. The reason Park Sang-yeep became the CEO of K Company also became clear. It was because Kang Jin-hoo introduced his senior from school, Park Sang-yeep, to Oh Taek-gyu. Everything fit together like clockwork. Oh Taek-gyu is the CEO of OTK Company.